Hi, everyone. Welcome to Warwick Podcast Society. This is episode 6, and we're still continuing our conversation about powerlifting in Warwick. And today we have Tay-ah with us. Tay-ah, welcome to Warwick Podcast Society. So, to give you a little bit of background about Tay-ah, she is the powerlifting captain of Warwick My bad. Warwick Powerlifting Society, Warwick Barbell Society. And she's been powerlifting for the past 3 years. And currently, she is a third year systems engineering finalist who's also undertaking PhD from September. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And to tell you a little bit about her powerlifting journey, she was a former under 67.5 kgs junior ABPU British champion 2022. And then she moved on to GBPF in 2023 and she competed as under 69 kgs
Yeah,
junior.
yeah.
Yeah, both divisionally and at the 2024 British Junior Championship. Wow, that is a lot.
Thank you.
So how are you feeling?
Yeah, good.
Are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you. I've just finished all my exams and everything, so
Mm,
just trying to take a breather and get back into like regular life and doing human things again, like laundry and cleaning and all back to that stuff.
back to being human.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we kind of want to start with your journey and your story of how you got into powerlifting.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us about your story?
So I feel like I got into powerlifting in like kind of a weird way. It was like just after COVID. Um, and I really wanted to kind of get back into doing sport,
Mm-hmm.
kind of as a way to just be more social, to be honest. I think COVID kind of meant like I had very limited like social opportunities at uni, and I
Right.
wanted something that could help me get back into a community, and I felt like
Mm-hmm.
sport was kind of the best way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I live in a very rural area, so there's not a lot of like kind of clubs around. So I
Mm,
wanted to do something that I could do on my own and kind of do anywhere sort of thing. And like kind of strength sports kind of ticked that box for
mm,
me. And then yeah, I got into it in a kind of a weird way that I was looking on YouTube for like different sorts of strength sports and like because like I've heard of like powerlifting and bodybuilding
mm.
and weightlifting, but like I had no idea what the difference was
Right.
really. So
Right.
um I turned to YouTube and I found a video that was like comparison battle between like CrossFitter,
Oh,
powerlifter,
right.
weightlifter, and bodybuilder. And Maddie Forberg was actually the like representing powerlifting. Um, and yeah, I just thought she looked really cool. She like looked how kind of like I wanted to look.
Mm,
And like powerlifting, the way she explained it and everything just seemed really cool. And I was like, yeah, let's have a crack at that and
wow. So
see
you
how it
saw,
goes.
yeah. So there was a representation with you.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, it was really, really cool. It was really
yeah.
nice.
So like from starting from like post-COVID to
hmm
like now, like what are some of your achievements?
So I would say like I because I picked up powerlifting and my first coach was in ABPU Federation.
Mm-hmm.
So powerlifting's got like lots of different federations. And they're all slightly different, and that was the one I kind of fell into.
Right.
Um, and they were like, "Oh, like, do you have any plans to compete?" And I was like, "I have
Mm,
no idea." And they were like, "Well, let's just have a crack at it, see if you like it. You might love it."
mm,
So yeah, so I did an AVPU comp within like a few weeks of starting training, which was really scary. But yeah, I just had loads of fun, and I was like, okay, I definitely want to do that again.
mm.
Um, and then I got part of Warwick Barbell that year at uni. And then I competed in the varsity that we have against
Right.
Coventry, which was really good fun. And then I also qualified for the British Championships that year,
Mm.
which was in Manchester. So I went there and then I managed to win my class, which was super exciting. Um, and then I took kind of like a year off competing. And then when I went back to it, I decided to do IPF because that's what
Mm,
Warwick Barbell does. And they do a university championship. So I was like, I want to have a chance to do that and represent like the uni.
mm.
So then, yeah, I did my first IPF comp in November, I think it was, of last year. And then I managed to qualify for the juniors nationals, which was held at Gymshark, which was really cool.
Wow.
And then I did that this summer, which was really, really cool.
Yeah. I think another accomplishment or achievement would be like the powerlifting captain at Warwick
Yeah, I
Barbell.
guess like I
How did
kind
that
of
happen?
like when I first joined Warwick Barbell, I was really lucky in that they had a lovely powerlifting captain called
Mm.
Jordan. And she just kind of like took me under her wing because I was very much like a baby
Aw.
powerlifter. And yeah, she gave me like loads of advice and tips and like um I was like, oh, I really want to like be able to do that for other people, like because she was a finalist. And I was like, oh, I'd like to be in that kind of like mum role,
Mm.
looking after people. So then yeah, I just kind of got involved with the club as much as I could. And then yeah, I took a year away because I did a study year abroad.
Oh, okay.
Um, but then when I came back, I was like, okay, I had plans to do a PhD, and I was like, if I get it, I would love to be able to apply to be powerlifting captain next year.
Mm.
Um, and then yeah, that's kind of how I got into that. I just wanted to like, I really liked the club. Like it gave me so many like new friends and community and everything. And I
Yeah.
was like, I want to like be in a position to like actually help people, if that makes sense.
Mm.
To like help organize things and help the club grow.
Yeah.
And yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, like when I first joined the club and there was a women's only session, like I think you were that person for me.
That's
Like the
really nice to
mother, yeah,
hear.
like the mother of the group kind of thing, because you're like teaching everything. And I think there was a point where I was struggling to put on the, what is it called, the sleeves,
Hmm.
and you were actually like helping me out. So I think, yeah,
That's
you
really
were
nice to
definitely that
hear.
person for me.
Yeah, I think it's just like one of those nice things. Like, hopefully, if I can do that for like five people, maybe two of them will
Mm,
go on and it kind of just
yeah,
grows. And yeah, it's really nice.
yeah. So I think we had the previous podcast with Brandon where we talked about powerlifting in general,
Hmm.
but I kind of wanted to have this conversation with you specifically about women in barbell.
Hmm.
So what do you think is how is it different for women and what are the challenges that you've faced?
I think like I feel like once you're in the community, it's powerlifting is actually quite a nice sport for women
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like compared to like other communities because I feel like because there's not as many of us, the ones that are in there do really stick together and look after each
Uh,
other.
mm,
And like, I feel like, again, because it's kind of a niche community, the men also kind of help look after you and stuff, and
mm,
kind of everyone's in it. But I think the biggest thing you face is kind of people from outside of the sport who don't really get it. Um,
um,
like especially I think like online, like every time I see like a woman powerlifter, like her videos online, there's always like loads of men in the comments like just trying to like undermine her in some way, being like, oh, like I as a grown man can lift more than that. And it's like, well, yeah, you're a grown man and she's like a 57 kilo like 20-year-old woman. Like that's not an achievement. But yeah, like just trying to bring people down or
mm,
like also like family members not really getting it.
mm,
Like I've had like my grandparents very much be like, oh, like be careful, you don't want to like lift too much. And I'm like, no, that's the literal goal is to lift as much as I can. um and just things like that, like it's and even things like when you're in kind of like a normal commercial gym,
mm.
um like I've been benching before and I've had people come up to me and just like take the plates away, like a
Whoa,
20
really?
kilo plate and be like, oh, well, I didn't think you were going to use it. And it's like, well, what? Hello?
That's
Um,
disrespectful.
yeah, it's just kind of, I feel like they're not used to seeing women doing kind
Mm,
of the benching and stuff as much. So they just kind of assume, oh, they're not going to need this and they take it. Or like with my, like, I've had dumbbells or whatever and like people have just taken them because they're like, oh, well, they're too heavy for her to be using. So she's not using them. And yeah, I feel like most of this kind of stuff we face comes from people outside of the community who just like
mm,
don't really get it.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'd kind of say that's like the biggest difficulty with getting into
Mm,
powerlifting. Once you can break into the community, it's actually really nice because everyone
yeah,
just kind of protects everyone else,
that's
really.
true. So what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out
I
about?
think like if you're brave enough to kind of do it on your own,
Mm-hmm.
then like that's amazing. Like I think just having the courage to just take up space and be
Mm-hmm.
like, I deserve to be here.
Yeah.
And like when someone does try and say to you like, oh, I didn't think you were using that, just stand up for yourself and be like, well, I was, so I'd like it back, please. But I get that can be kind of really intimidating for people. So
Mm,
I would say like find a friend you could go with, who can kind of like you can stick together sort of thing.
Mm,
Or even finding like a community like Warwick Barbell, like a group setting you
mm,
can kind of go and train in where it's a bit more comfortable. I know like when I first started training, I started training at like a special powerlifting gym.
mm.
But when I walked in, like everyone in there was so big, and I was like, "Well, this is really scary."
Yeah.
And I actually went and trained upstairs for the first couple of weeks in kind of like
Mm,
the lighter weight section because I was like, I don't feel like I belong downstairs
right.
because there were so many insane lifts happening, and I was like, I'm
Yeah.
very much a beginner. And then like I had a friend, it was Jordan actually, who was like,
Mm,
"Oh, like come down and train with us. Like, it's fine. Like nobody's looking at what weight you're lifting. Like everyone just wants you to be there and have fun."
yeah.
And yeah, I went down one day and then I never trained upstairs again. Like it was just great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is just getting over that first barrier, and I think like finding someone to
Yeah.
go with, or like if you know someone a bit more experienced, or there's a club who trains. Yeah, most of the time, like these people look really scary on the outside, but they're actually some of the most lovely people, and they're just super excited to share their
Mm.
sport with you. So yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if you have any examples of like the powerlifting community helping you out, but I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah, I think it is just that like I mean, like I said, when I first started, like I was lifting a lot less than like other people I train with, but like I was never made to feel that like I like shouldn't be there and like I was
mm,
taking up space or whatever. Like I was always included as part of their like training thing, and like everyone's win is celebrated kind of relative to themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like I think one of the big things that's like kind of frowned upon is in powerlifting is when people try to belittle other people's accomplishments
mm,
because like they forget like what benching a plate for the first time feels like, or
yeah,
things like that. Whereas like in general, like the powerlifting community really remembers like how those like relative accomplishments feel.
I do, yeah. So, how does your week, like a week in your training look like? How do
Um,
you start? How many days do you work out?
Yeah, so I train about 4 days a week. My usual split, I usually train on like I have like a big squat day on a Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have like a lighter deadlift day on a Thursday. And then I have like lighter squats on a Saturday, and then my big deadlifts are on a Sunday. I usually bench like 3, 4 times a week, like on the same
Mm,
days. So I'll do one, like I'll do my big thing like squat or deadlift first, and then I'll usually bench afterwards. Um, and yeah, so like you kind of want to try and balance like your lighter, almost recovery days with your heavier sessions.
mm,
And you tend to find like at the beginning of the block, they're usually pretty level, like your primary days and secondary days will be kind of similar. But
right.
then as you're getting things on your primary days are getting heavier, your like secondary days usually get easier to like let your
Mm.
body kind of recover, I guess.
Wait, well, what's your favorite lift?
Oof. Um, I think probably have to say bench.
Oh,
I
really?
love deadlifts,
Mm,
like, but they're something that like when they're going good, they're going amazing, but when they're
mm,
going bad, they suck and I don't want to do them.
no.
And like they they're very tiring. Like they really take a lot out of you. Whereas like sometimes when I've had a big deadlift day, I'm like, all I want to do is just lie down and bench. And like bench tends to be the most like loyal, I guess. Like it's always
Loyal.
reasonably consistent. Yeah, like
I think a lot of people would disagree, including me.
no, I like I've definitely had falling outs with it. Bench has made me cry a couple times. Um, but like I feel like it's one of the easier lifts to like strip back, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
In that like you can do a super, comp specific bench, like really high arch, like max grip or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're like, oh, my brain is completely fried, I just need a chill day, you can kind of come in and just like close grip, flat back bench, and like it's just a chill day. Whereas like you can't do chill deadlifts, you know?
Mm.
And squats, like no, never, absolutely never,
No?
never in the running. No,
Okay.
hate squats. I'm long femur gang. They're not for me. They just take so much out of me, and
Yeah,
like
fair.
my lungs can't cope. They're not for me. Mm-mm.
Okay, so like what about recovery? Like what are you do you have any tips for recovery?
Um,
Like to be injury free and also like to recover after workout?
I would say, like, in terms of specifically like injury free, I think like learning when's the time to push and when's the time to like pull back a little bit is really important. So like I know for me that like low bar squats are really taxing on my body. So like I only really push those going into comp, and
Okay.
then when like I don't have a competition in sight, I just strip back to high bar. Because I know I can do a lot of volume in that and it doesn't really affect my body in the same way.
Okay.
Um, and I think, yeah, just little things like that. Like, obviously, when you're going into competition, like, you need to be able to push your comp standard lifts, but they're typically the most taxing ones. So, like, if you don't have a competition in sight, like, there's no point really pushing yourselves for things that don't have a lot of, like, strength benefits compared to, like, easier variations, if you
Yeah,
like.
that's fair.
Um, and I think in terms of, like, outside of training, I think sleep's the most important. um, and like eating enough. I think that's
Mm.
something as well, like a lot of women struggle with, is we've kind of had years of telling us to like eat less.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh
like
my God.
I remember like being in school and like, like trying to skip meals or have small
Mm.
portion sizes or like, yeah, just always being told, eat less or whatever.
Amen.
Whereas I've kind of like worked really hard to like flip that, and now I almost have a thing of like, oh, I need to make sure I'm eating enough, like otherwise, this training session isn't going to feel good or whatever.
Mm.
um and really learning to view food as like fuel, and like,
Right.
being like, oh, I need to make sure I like get that meal in and everything so I can recover.
Yeah.
I personally don't drink anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I think things like that, like I know people who will go on a night out and then the next day be like, "Oh, I don't know why my training session felt so bad." And it's like, your body's ruined going into it. Like,
What did you expect?
yeah, exactly. Like, I think I know a lot of successful powerlifters who still
Mm.
do drink, but they know that like, you know, the
Their
training
limit.
set they go into their session with expectations that it's not going to feel the
Right.
best or whatever.
Fair.
But yeah, I think mainly for recovery, there's not really any massive secrets. It's just like, don't max out all the time.
Mm.
Um, if you've got a big lift coming up, give yourself a bit of time to recover before it. Sleep enough and eat enough.
Yeah. I think the thing you said about relationship with food was like very personal to me.
Yeah.
So like when did you like realize that it's, like because most of the times you're like working out with men,
hmm
you know? At least for me, like it was
hmm
like mostly working out with men and like to have that perspective that they're in a completely different ball game than me, like did you have that moment?
Yeah, I think I kind of had like, for me, I always complained to my friend that like with women, it always seems like there's two different types of body standards, where there's muscly and fit and like,
Mm,
kind of like jacked. Um, and then there's like the other way where it's like kind of very skinny and
mm,
lean and small. And you can't do both at the same time. It just doesn't work. Whereas I feel like men, typically the conventional standard for beauty for them is like always jacked, so they always kind of working towards the same goal.
mm,
Whereas I feel like women can sometimes have a switch where they're like working towards being jacked, and then someone walks past you who's really skinny, and you're like, oh, I kind of want to look like that again. And like it's always kind of that switch where you can't be both, you have to pick one.
mm,
Um, and I think I still struggle with that sometimes, especially like when it comes to trying clothes on and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this would be so much easier if like, my legs weren't as big or like my shoulders weren't as big.
mm,
Um, but then I kind of remind myself that like I can do so much more now than I could when I was a lot smaller.
mm,
Um, like when I first got into powerlifting, I think I was about, I don't know, maybe like sort of top end of like 50 kilos.
mm,
And now I usually sit closer to like sort of 70. And like I remember when I started powerlifting being like, oh, like I could cut into the 52s and whatever. Whereas now I'm like, when am I going to be big enough to bulk into the 76s?
the shift in mindset.
Yeah, it is
Mm,
just that like, oh, okay, like if I want to lift more, I need to have more muscle and I need to be bigger.
Right.
And yeah, kind of thinking about like what my body can do rather
Mm,
than what it looks like, I guess, is kind of what kind of flipped that for
yeah.
me.
Seems like you put in like a lot of thought and a lot of work, obviously, like into powerlifting. Like, how do you manage that along with your engineering degree?
I would say I'm very lucky in that like a lot of the people I surround myself with also train. So like my
Oh, like in your field,
um
in
it
your
more in that
course.
like the people I kind of hang out with.
Okay.
So like my partner trains and everything. So my like social time also
Mm.
includes training.
Oh, okay.
So like my weekends when I go to stay with my partner, like our big time of hanging out is training together.
Okay.
Which really helps because then it's like I'm not trying to juggle three things.
Right.
But yeah, I would say generally I try and keep my training as normal as possible. And then when deadlines kind of come up, then I start talking to my coach and being like, okay, I need to be realistic here. I can't fit in 4 sessions this week. Can we
Mm.
move some stuff around and I'll do like 3 sessions or like I'll do two this week and just like have a short break.
Mm.
And yeah, I kind of have to think ahead a little bit and be like, okay, these couple weeks, training is not going to be able to be a priority. So
Mm.
let's switch some things around now that sets me up for then,
Mm.
basically. Um, and yeah, kind of stuff like that, really. In general, I would say I probably prioritize training more than I should. I've definitely had times where I'm like, okay, I'll just bring my laptop with me and then I'll train and try and do some work between
Have you
sets.
actually done that?
I have done
Oh
that.
my God.
I had a module where had to be running like neural networks and stuff to train. So I would set them up and leave them like running whilst I was doing my sets.
Did it work?
Um,
Like, did it help?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I got the stuff done. But to be fair, most of the time I say I bring my laptop with me. I bring my laptop with me, but then I just end up talking.
Yeah,
So.
fair. Another area I wanted to talk to you about was mental health,
hmm
because I know you advocate for that a lot on your social handles. I remember you were competing. Was it the recent one? The
Yeah,
recent,
is it juniors? Yeah.
yeah, the juniors where you almost gave up
Yeah.
like competing because you were just like so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
How did you collect yourself? Like, first of all, like your thoughts on mental health
hmm
and like walk us through that moment of how you picked yourself up and like competed.
So I think in terms of mental health, like I think that's I don't know, it has a weird thing in powerlifting where like it's kind of like a joke that everyone in powerlifting is like going to the gym to like fight their demons or whatever and like lift heavy circles makes the sad go away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think sometimes there is a danger of it being like over normalized where people are like, oh, just go to the gym and it'll be fine. And like
Mm.
they don't really talk about it as much. I think that is changing more. Specifically like I'm seeing a lot more like influencer people kind of speak up and be like, like I know that we're supposed to be like, these big like jacked people, but we also have feelings, like let's talk to each other. And I think especially with social media, like a lot of people like sort of the more competitive lifters are starting to be more transparent with their like struggles around training and
Mm.
everything. And like, when you have a bad training session, it can kind of really mess with you, especially if you're like getting ready for a competition. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot more people that have been more transparent around that, which kind
Mm.
of is helping. Specifically for me, like my training is usually fine, but like competing, like when I'm getting ready to go out for my squats for the like first lift of the day, I just get so anxious. And so like I can't even describe it. It's not a sense of like, oh, like I'm scared I'm gonna fail this weight. It's just the thought of going out and like being in front of all these people and everyone's gonna watch you and you're like, oh,
Mm.
it just really gets to me. And yeah, I had that like during when I did my divisional qualifier in November, like I had it a little bit where I was nervous,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of just got through it. And then once I started the day, then I was fine. As soon as I got that first squat in, I was like, cool. But juniors, I think, because it was at Gymshark, which is such a big venue, and it was live streamed, and like I had a lot of like friends and stuff watching,
Mm,
and like I don't know if you saw the setup, but it's like tiered like seating and everything. And like yeah, there were just so many people there, and I was like, oh God, everyone's gonna be watching, and I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to go out and do it. And I actually backed out of I like unracked my last warm up, and then I just put it back in. I was like, I don't want to do this. I can't
oh
do
my
this.
God.
And my coach, who's also my partner, was like, like, what's happening? Do you need me to like make the weight lighter or whatever? Like, is that what's making you nervous? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, no, I just don't want to be here. And he kind of just like took me to the side, and one of the event organizers, they came over and they were like, like, is everything okay? And I was like, just don't want to be here. And she kind of just like took my hands and she was like, you're doing this for fun. Like you're doing this because you enjoy the sport and because you want to be here. Like there's no pressure on like numbers or anything
Mm,
today. It's for fun at the end of the day. And she was like, go out there, do one squat. If you still feel awful, call it a day. Go home. Like there's no pressure on you. But you've worked really hard to get here. You've done that qualifier total. You've come all the
mm.
way. Just put one squat in and kind of see how you feel. And I was like, okay, okay. And then I ended up like having to rush my last warm up because I'd spent like 5 minutes having a breakdown. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to quickly go do my last warm up. And I did it and it was fine. And I was like, okay, let's just go out or just do one. And then I kind of went into it with the mindset of like, I'm just gonna um I don't know what the word is. I was just gonna take the easy route basically, where I was like, I'm just gonna do one squat, I'll do one bench, I'll do one deadlift, and that'll be it. I can say I've competed, but whatever. Um, and then I did my first squat, and I actually didn't get it. I got called up for depth,
Okay.
and I walked out, and I could see my coach being like, waiting for me to have a breakdown again because I didn't get it. Because like that's kind of like the worst thing that can
Mm,
happen is you don't get your opener. But for some reason, like I'd gone out and done it, and like I got out there and I realized it wasn't that bad, and I was
mm.
like, I'll just take it again. It'll be fine. I'll just go out, do it, sink it. I know what I need to do. And then yeah, did the next one, got it, and I got all of my lifts for the rest of the day.
Damn. How much did you total?
I think it was three. It was either 340 or 342 and a half.
Wow.
Um,
Did you hit any of your PRs that
yeah,
day?
I PB'd on every single lift.
Really?
Yeah, I
Wow.
literally 2.5 kilo PBs on everything,
A
which
pep.
was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I was like, I didn't even want to compete today, and yeah, I went out and like managed to PB on everything.
Damn. A
Um,
pep talk really goes a long way.
Pardon?
A pep talk?
Yeah,
It really goes a long way.
yeah. I think it was just that thing of like getting rid of the expectation. I
Mm,
think it was almost worse because my like training going into comp had been going so well
mm.
that I felt that I had to show up with big numbers.
Okay.
Otherwise, like I was kind of letting everyone down, if that makes sense. Like everyone was expecting big things from me because training had been going so well.
Mm,
And so I went in kind of panicking, like, "Oh, like I'm a failure if I don't like hit big
mm.
numbers today." And that just really got in front of
Yeah.
me. And then when someone like kind of told me like, it
Just have
doesn't
fun.
matter, just have fun. Like literally do one lift because
Mm,
you've come all this way, you've already weighed in and everything. Do one lift. That's it. That's all you need to do. If you don't want to do any more, you don't want to do any more. It doesn't matter. You've come here for fun, whatever.
yeah.
And yeah, as soon as I got that first squat in, I was like, cool, let's just do the rest of the day.
Got it. So, like, what do you think are some of the coping mechanisms that you can rely on, especially for powerlifters? Do you have any tips for them?
um, I think this is probably kind of a cop out, but like I just really rely on like my community around
Mm.
me. Like my partner's kind of my rock with everything. Like
Oh.
they don't really understand what I'm going through in that like they don't get the anxiety in the same way as I do,
Mm.
but they are very good at empathizing and just kind
Mm.
of looking after me basically.
That's really nice.
And I think there's also like again, powerlifting's got a really good community in that like if you turn up at a competition and someone can see that you're like not having a good time and
Mm.
something's gone wrong, like there will always be someone who will come up to you and be like, you know, are you okay? Can I do anything for you? Exactly like that meet director did for me, where they were like, you know, come over here, let's calm
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I guess my like general advice would be, yeah, like try not to put pressure on yourself, as difficult as it might sound.
Mm.
I think meet day for me just comes with so much pressure because it's like that's what everything's been leading up to, is that one day. And then it just like always makes me perform worse because
Right.
it's, you know, it's supposed to be that one day where you show out.
Mm. It's also your
Um,
expectation, like
yeah.
more than others. It's probably also like the own
Oh,
expectation you have from
100%. Like
yourself.
I was going into it and I was like, well, I know I hit that in training, so I need to be able to hit this to prove that I've,
Mm.
you know, made progress. And
Yeah.
I think people forget that like strength isn't linear, in the sense that like just because you've hit this number like one day and then 4 days later you can't do this number, it doesn't mean like you're not stronger. It's just there's so many external factors
That's
going
just
into
how it
things.
works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just how it works. Like you're always going to have slightly off days or whatever.
Yeah. Fair.
And it's very much like it's a long game.
Yeah. We also talked a lot about the powerlifting community. So what do you think they can do better, especially
Um,
for women?
I think I like this is kind of specific to competing, but like I would really like to see some more like upper end weight classes in women's powerlifting. So currently I think the cap is at 84 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
So you have under 69s, under there's more under that, but under 69s, under 76s, and then under 84s, and then it's 84 plus. And I feel like this kind of presents like a weird thing for like, especially girls who are taller. Um,
Mm.
they're like already sitting at the top of their weight category.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like, you know, I'm very short. I'm like 5'2", and I'm already in the middle of the weight classes.
Mm.
If you're like more like average height or taller, say you're like 5'7", and you're sitting at around, you know, like 80 kilos with no
Mm.
training, there's no room for you to grow. And I think it's one, it's a really big mental thing to be like, I'm in the biggest weight category.
Mm.
You know, like I know a girl who like cut down into the weight class below because she was like, I don't want to be in the biggest weight category. And
Oh
it's like,
no.
girl, you're like 5'10", like what, you know? But it's that mental thing of, you know, they
Mm.
don't want to be, because we're always told we should be smaller. No one wants to be in the biggest weight category.
Mm.
And then it's also that thing of like, you know, if you're 6 foot and you're at 90 kilos, suddenly you're in an unlimited category and having to compete with people who are like 120 kilos. Um, and I think it's just, there's just no room to grow.
Mm.
Like for me, I know that if I wanted to get bigger, I wanted to put on more muscle mass. I've got, you know, quite a few weight classes to work up through. And that's kind of the normal progression. Like for men, for example, you typically see the average man will start out in like the 83s, and then they'll move up to the 93s,
Mm.
and then they've got the 105s. Like there's a really nice progression. But if you're taller, for women, there's just nowhere for you to go. So I'd really like to see maybe like a 90 kilo category, something like that, that like just gives them more room to grow before they have to compete against people who are like,
Mm.
you know, 120 kilos, because it's a massive jump. Um, I think also there's been a few, again, this is like competition rules, but there was a rule they brought in that was like you had to wear the same singlet throughout the whole day. Which, you know, if you're a woman with like, say your period starts and you have an accident there, you know, what happens then? Are you not
Right.
allowed to change singlet? There's also a big thing with like incontinence is quite common in powerlifting. I experience it a lot, like any heavy squats or heavy deadlifts, like it doesn't matter how many times I go to the toilet
Mm.
during my session, like I'll always wet myself. It just happens.
Yeah.
It's just the way I'm built. And that's still a thing which is like kind of has a lot of shame still attached to it. Like I'm quite lucky in that I've got to the point where I'm like, I don't really care. Like I bring spare pair of shorts with me. Like I clean up, not bothered, not really
Yeah.
fussed.
Yeah.
But I know there are women who will like bail out a lift that they had the strength to,
Yeah.
but they're like, I don't want to wet myself, you know, in the gym. I don't want to wet myself in front of people. Um, and it's like it's scary, because it's still kind of mocked, and like,
Yeah, it
especially
is.
if you go
Yeah.
online, you've got men being like, this is disgusting,
Mm,
you should, wear diapers or whatever to protect against this. And it's like, I can wear like three different pairs of pants. It's still gonna happen. Like, I do every measure I can to prevent it. It still happens. Like, it's not my fault, you know?
yeah,
As long as you're cleaning up after yourself, what's the
exactly.
problem?
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's like something which I'd like to see. Again, that ties in with like the singlet rule. It's like, well, if I wet
Mm,
myself on squats, are you expecting me to wear a wet singlet for the whole day? And like, it's also just like a hygiene thing, because
yeah.
the event after squat is bench. So it's like, you want me to sit on a bench and I'm sharing that bench with other girls. Like, it's not nice. No one wants to be sat on a wet bench. Um, but yeah, like, I think that's
Yeah,
another
makes
thing where
sense.
like,
Yeah.
it would be nice for people to just kind of take time to like learn more about why that happens, and
Yeah.
like
Fair, fair.
realize that it's just a thing that happens, you know?
Yeah. Also, one more question I have is like, how do you keep yourself motivated?
I guess for me, like, I definitely go through periods of being like, oh, I'm bored, I don't want to do this.
Mm,
For me, like, kind of switching up and having different training goals happens,
mm,
like, keeps me kind of motivated. So like, for example, if I've kind of hit a bit of a plateau with like my main lifts, I'll like pick a variation and be like, oh, like, how far can I push this?
okay.
Um, as like, as random as something like, oh, I wonder like what's the biggest way I could do for a set of 8 on like high bar squats, and just like push a random variation. And I feel like getting those little PBs kind of gives you the little dopamine rush that
Yeah.
reminds you why you're doing it and
Yeah.
kind
So
of
you're
keeps
kind
you
of like,
going.
yeah, making it
Um,
interesting for yourself.
yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
just kind of switching things up and having different little
Mm,
training goals. And again, I think because a lot of my friends in like the powerlifting community, they kind of all keep you motivated because everyone has their little wins. And like, I know like when I hadn't competed in a while and then I went to support one of my friends at their comp, I was like, oh, I can't, well, I didn't think I was that fast, but now actually I'm watching
yeah.
them compete and I'm super excited for when I compete. And it's just things like that, really.
Mm,
You just kind of have to, when things get boring, you have to start looking for the little
mm.
wins.
Yeah, I think with that, we've come to quite the end of our podcast. But like, I would want to ask some questions that we asked on Instagram.
Yeah, of course.
So the first question is, what breed is he?
So that's a reference to my Instagram handle for people who don't know. My Instagram handle is he is just a little boy.
Mm.
And it started off literally as a joke from a meme where it's a really fat beagle, and someone commented going, "What breed is he?" And someone replied going, "He's just a little boy." And I
Oh,
just really enjoyed it. And yeah, just makes me chuckle.
the other one specifically from Chloe, and she says, "Ask Taya why she's so cool."
I would have to say that I take inspiration from Chloe because she is also very
Oh,
cool. She's another one of the girls that I kind of started powerlifting with.
okay,
Um, and yeah, she's kind of similar to Jordan in that she was kind of, she's a
helpful.
couple years older than me, and she's like kind of one of my mum figures, and I'm like,
Oh,
oh, I want to be like her when I'm older.
that's really cute. Another question, do you work out when you're on your period? I think
Yes.
we didn't touch that, but like, can you quickly
hmm Yeah,
talk us?
so I personally do. I tend to find that actually it's the week before my period where my strength kind of dips.
Mm,
But I think it's like that kind of managing expectations and going
mm,
into training. And when something feels heavier, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense because my period's due in like 5 days or whatever. So it's gonna feel a bit heavier.
right.
Um, I tend to like not really adjust my training around it that much. I just kind of work through it. Um, but yeah, I just have those mental expectations of what it's going to
Mm,
be like. I'm quite lucky in that like my period, like I said, I get a bit weaker the week before, and like the first day of my period usually isn't super comfortable,
mm-hmm,
but the rest of it is fine for me. But I know some people who like, it really affects them, and they'll just have lighter training sessions.
right.
And I think it's just really about knowing your body, and like at the end of the day, like you're doing this because you enjoy it, and like
Mm,
unless you're like in the last couple weeks leading up to comp and missing that one session is going to like really, mess with your head for your numbers on the day, there's no point forcing yourself through something you're like having a horrible time doing. So I would say, if it's like if you're not having a good time, then take it a bit lighter. Take a rest day if you need to. Just adjust your body. I know recently there's been a couple studies coming out that I've actually been a bit vocal about and kind of saying this is nonsense. Because there was someone who came out with a study that was like, to summarize, it basically said that like feeling weaker in your period or whatever was like all in your head and it was like a mental game. And when I looked into the study, because it was reposted by like a powerlifting coach, and when I looked into it, the study was done on part of the requirements for being a participant was that they didn't train more than like 2 hours a week. So like that's already me out because I train about 8 hours, if not more. And the test that they did to like measure their strength was like it was like one bicep curl, a box jump, and like something else. And I was like, okay, so that's just not related to powerlifting training at all. And the findings basically were the actual study was nothing like the headline. It basically was just like there's no evidence kind of either way to come to a confident conclusion. And basically the takeaway was that like it varies so much for everyone and your personal experience that like it's whatever. So yeah, I was not very happy about that.
Was it a guy doing the research?
Well, so the actual study was done by a woman, and the actual study was really well written and basically just like, it's just inconclusive. Like, this study said this, but also if we do like a meta-analysis of all the other studies, like the studies just aren't high quality enough to make a good conclusion. So it was the person who reposted it was a guy, and they just kind of twisted the title to be what they wanted. So it was supposed to say that there's no evidence to suggest like period is a factor because it's like there's no conclusive evidence either way. Some studies say it is, some say it isn't, but they're all such rubbish quality that you can't make a confident conclusion. And this guy took it as okay, that means that the period has no effect. So yeah.
Makes sense. One last question is someone said, I get intimidated to come work out at the gym. Do you have any tips?
So I think like I touched on that a little bit earlier, but I think my best advice if you're intimidated is find a friend who you can go with. Either a friend who wants to start also going to the gym or whatever, or if you've got a friend who's quite experienced with the gym, most people are like more than happy to kind of show you around. If you don't know anyone who goes to the gym, have a look around, see if like your local uni or your area has got any gym clubs. Reach out to them. There's usually, especially with powerlifting, like I said, it's such a niche community that like we want to share it with everyone. Anyone who shows interest, we're like, yes, it's great, come. But yeah, that would be my advice. Really, would be to find someone to go with. Can just give you a little bit more confidence in kind of a group or a paired setting. And you can start little and work your way up. Like you said, like I started upstairs in the lighter weight section, kind of hiding away. And then as I kind of got more confidence and stuff, I moved downstairs. And same with my gym at home. Like I had never seen a woman in like the dumbbell section ever. And when I first like went over there, I felt like everyone was looking at me because I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there. And then yeah, now I don't think like it doesn't even cross my mind. I'm just like, oh, it's just another part of the gym. Like yeah, so that would be my advice. Find a friend.
Yeah. Okay, I think with that we have come to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your thoughts. I think I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure our listeners, our viewers have too. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Tay-ah.
for having me. Thank you.